See, pain in the sense, is it ascending tracts or descending tract? It's ascending tracts. So in the ascending tract, we have two different tracts. Do you remember? Anterior spinothalamic tract and lateral spinothalamic tract. We have two tracts which are carrying the sensations from the skin to the brain. Okay. So like lateral spinothalamic tract is concerned with carrying of pain sensation. So the lateral spinothalamic tract starts in the skin, like we have the cutaneous receptors. So the cutaneous receptors will carry the information through sensory nerves, and there is a synapse of these sensory nerves. We have dorsal root ganglion which carries the pain pathway, and there is a synapse at posterior horn of spinal cord. So from here, the next order neuron starts. So that means from this cutaneous receptors till the posterior horn of spinal cord, you call it as first order neuron. So here you will see again, we have so many nuclei in the spinal cord. The name of the nucleus with which this like posterior horn of like spinal cord is synapsing, you call it as marginal nucleus. Okay, and substantia gelatinosa of Rolando. Okay, here we will find the synapse between the posterior posterior root or the dorsal root of the spinal nerve with the marginal nucleus and substantia gelatinosa. Then you will see the next order neurons will start, and they are not traveling in the same direction, but they are just crossing the opposite pathway. Okay, so this is actually crossing over, and then you will see the pathway is ascending upwards in the brainstem, medulla, midbrain, pons. Okay, then then what happens, you see there is a relaying of neurons again here. Third order neurons are starting in the thalamus. Okay, again there is a synapse between the second order neuron and the third order neuron. Okay, third order neuron has actually started in this thalamus region. So from the thalamus you will see finally the fibers are radiating in sensory cortex. Okay, that is. Now, what is this pathway? This is actually called as pain pathway. That means this pathway is carrying the information of pain. Okay, sensory pathway. So that's what is asked, pain pathway. But in fact, if it is coming as an essay, you will have analgesic pathway also. What is the meaning of analgesic pathway? Suppose if you are giving any analgesic drug, like any painkiller, like you have diclofenac, paracetamol. Okay, so what does it do? So this drug will not allow the information to pass from the posterior, what is spinal nerve. Okay, so in the spinal nerve is mixed nerve, isn't it? So sensory component of the spinal nerve will not be allowed to pass the information from here to the second order neuron. So there is an arrest of information, so that there is no information going to the thalamus. Henceforth, there is no information going to sensory cortex, so that person will not feel any pain. Okay, so this analgesic pathway is nothing but it is something like gate control theory. That means this posterior horn of spinal cord is acting as a gate which is stopping the entry of pain in the at the level of posterior horn itself. Okay, beta. So now after that, let me go to basal ganglia. As Shavi is telling us, it is nothing but the collection of gray matter within the white matter. That means we have deep nuclei which are present in the cerebral cortex. Okay. Hema, do you remember the names? What do we have? Under basal ganglia, names, components. Shavi?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me what are the components of basal ganglia, beta? As you said, these are nothing but the collection of gray matter which we see within the white matter. So if you see, this is the cut section of cerebrum. So in this cut section of cerebrum, the outer area is gray matter, right? It is little gray in color, and inner part is white matter. But within the white matter also, we will find scattered collection of gray matter, which is nothing but basal ganglia. So the components of basal ganglia are thalamus. Okay, we have caudate nucleus, then we have lentiform nucleus. Okay, so these are, see, they are called as corpus striatum. Okay, then substantia nigra and subthalamic nucleus of Lewis. These are the components of basal ganglia. When you talk about corpus striatum, it has caudate nucleus and lentiform nucleus. Okay, so see, caudate nucleus is something like this, which has head, body, and tail, which is now tail is related to amygdaloid nucleus. Okay. Now, after writing the components of basal ganglia, that means what is it made up of? So corpus striatum, you will be writing it is made up of caudate nucleus, then lentiform nucleus. Lentiform nucleus, these components we also study under in anatomy for internal capsule. See, this area is actually internal capsule between the thalamus, caudate nucleus and lentiform nucleus. V-shaped area is internal capsule. So in relation to that, we generally talk about these. Okay. So lentiform nucleus is this red in color one, the lateral one. Okay, these two. So lentiform nucleus is further subdivided into medial globus pallidus and lateral putamen. Okay, beta. So that is. So these are the components. Apart from that, the second component we have substantia nigra. Okay. So which is situated below red nucleus. If you remember, red nucleus is actually present in midbrain, isn't it? So that is made up of large pigmented and small non-pigmented cells. So substantia nigra will release one neurotransmitter dopamine, which is very important actually. Then the last component of basal ganglia is subthalamic nucleus of Lewis, okay, which is situated lateral to red nucleus. Okay, that means this is also found in the midbrain, dorsal to substantia nigra. Now, once you write the components, now you also know, like roughly, if you just take the cross section of cerebrum of the brain, the inside scattered gray matter here and there, blue, red, gray, whatever gray matter you are finding inside the white matter of cerebrum is nothing but basal ganglia. Now we should know the afferent and efferent connections. Okay, first of all, see whatever is shown in blue color, these are the components of basal ganglia. Okay, so that means we have caudate nucleus, we have then globus pallidus, and we have substantia nigra, isn't it? So that means we have different areas of the brain. This is putamen, sorry. Different parts of the brain will be sending connections to the basal ganglia. So the connections may come from cerebral cortex to caudate nucleus, thalamus to caudate nucleus, subthalamic nucleus to globus pallidus, substantia nigra to putamen. So all these are called as afferent connections. So if the connections are going from this basal ganglia to the distant parts, that is you have caudate nucleus, then we have this lentiform nucleus, globus pallidus and putamen subdivisions. From here you are finding, see, to and fro. There also you found words like subthalamic nucleus, substantia nigra, red nucleus, hypothalamus, thalamus. All these are receiving fibers from the basal ganglia. So that forms afferent and efferent connections, which you can write in words. Okay, connections of basal ganglia. After knowing the connections of basal ganglia, here also in the tabular form it is given. You have to memorize this table just following the diagram. Easily you can write what are the afferent connections, what are the efferent connections. Okay, not only in the corpus striatum is nothing but caudate nucleus and lentiform nucleus is corpus striatum. Substantia nigra what we find in the midbrain, isn't it, near the red nucleus, and lateral to the red nucleus we have subthalamic nucleus of Lewis. See what are the afferent connections and efferent connections. After knowing these connections, we have to know the functions of basal ganglia. So what are the functions? See, first of all, it is very important for the control of muscle tone. Okay. So basal ganglia, in fact, gamma motor neurons of the spinal cord are responsible for the development of tone of the muscle. So basal ganglia actually decreases muscle tone by inhibiting gamma motor neurons through descending inhibitory reticular system in the brainstem. So that means what? The muscle tone is reduced by the activity of basal ganglia. This word is very important because Suppose if this basal ganglia is not working, muscle tone will increase like anything and the muscle becomes very much rigid. What is the name of the disease where basal ganglia is not functioning? As I move, you will find the name of the disease, but we have discussed this disease many times. But do you remember? Basal ganglia, Parkinsonism, isn't it? So basically, what does it do? It helps in reducing, decreasing the muscle tone. Okay, then control of motor activities. See, for every contraction should be followed by relaxation, isn't it? That means what, when the muscle in the state of is in the state of contraction, we have inhibitory type of neurotransmitters like dopamine, isn't it? So that is actually very important. Otherwise, muscle will be in continuous state of contraction and we may get fits, isn't it? Epilepsy. Such type of effects are not there because the basal ganglia is functioning by the release of a neuroinhibitory type of transmitter, that is dopamine. Okay, so that means the regulation of these voluntary movements is controlled by basal ganglia. Okay, our conscious movements, whatever we do, subconscious movements. Okay, so these are for example, conscious movements. When a stray dog is barking at a man, immediately person will understand, he starts running, isn't it? Similarly, subconscious movements, like suppose if you are writing any alphabet, you will also bend your body and you will just assign a particular posture, so that to facilitate, those are all subconscious movements. Okay, you are doing cutting, you will bend your body, you are hammering something, that all automatically our other hand comes and it takes support. So all those are subconscious movements. Okay, reflex activities. Suppose now you are listening to the lecture, something is falling from there, suppose suddenly, though you don't look there but still you will notice, that is the activity of visual and labyrinthine reflexes. Okay beta, so that is control of reflex muscular activity. Okay, then control of automatic associated movement. So automatic associated movement in the sense like swinging of arms while walking, appropriate facial expression while talking, all these are associated movements which are under the control of basal ganglia. Okay, that's the reason in case if person is suffering with the lesion of basal ganglia, he will not have any movements, like poverty of movements will be there. Okay, mask like face, there will not be any proper expression. So arousal mechanism, that means suppose if exams are there, you become very much alert and active, no, that is arousal mechanism. Okay, so what is the neurotransmitter? I said dopamine, which is released by dopaminergic fiber. So actually many neurotransmitters are listed here, beta. You can learn at least 4 among these. So for example, if it is corpus striatum, dopamine, it is new inhibitory type of neurotransmitter. Okay, like intrinsic fibers of corpus striatum and substantia nigra, they release gamma aminobutyric acid, GABA, which is also inhibitory. There are many other neurotransmitters which are also excitatory in function. Okay, you can just make a note of 4 or 5. This is the list of neurotransmitters which is released by basal ganglia. So basically, what does it do? What is the chief important function I wanted you to remember? It decreases the muscle tone. Okay, so that the muscle is not in a state of continuous contraction. So now what happens if this is damaged? What is the name of the disease? Parkinson's disease. Okay, progressive degenerative disease of nervous system associated with destruction of brain cells. Okay, so that means basal ganglia is damaged and there is no source of dopamine. Okay, so that is Parkinson's disease. There may be some underlying viral infection or like the blood vessels may get blocked due to arteriosclerosis or injury of basal ganglia, or there may be certain drugs which may damage basal ganglia. Okay, like reserpine and all antihypertensive drugs. Antihypertensive in the sense drugs which are taken to control blood pressure. Okay, idiopathic when we do not know any cause. So what happens in Parkinson's disease? So person will have tremors. Okay, so much of shivering will be there. and you will see the movements are also very much slow. Okay, bradykinesia, akinesia, hypokinesia. Okay, then poverty of movement. Just now I told you facial expressions are not accompanied by, like suppose if we are talking, we also smile, and we will see like the opposite person likes what we talk, isn't it? Like sometimes if we are angry also we show on face, something like that. But those movements are not seen in case of Parkinsonism. The person becomes statue like, you call it as mask like face, because of absence of appropriate expressions. Okay, that is, muzzle becomes very much rigid. This condition is called as lead pipe rigidity, as though it's very difficult to initiate a muscle contraction. That's what is called as lead pipe rigidity. Okay, gait is manner of walking, and this gait will be very short, as though robot is walking. Beta, you just think about robot, it becomes like short quick steps you will see, and he will be bending forwards as though he is going to catch up center of gravity. You see very old people will be something like walking in this way. That is nothing but degeneration of basal ganglia due to age. Okay, that is one of the like reasons, one of the clinical symptom of underlying Parkinson's disease only. Okay, so speech problems may be there. Okay, like there may be slurring of speech, words may be repeated many times, they may cry, they may become very easily they are upset. Okay, so there may be like mental disturbance, that is dementia. So in this case, what is the neurotransmitter which is not released? Dopamine. So what is the drug of choice we have to give? Dopamine injection. Okay, dopamine usually does not cross blood-brain barrier, hence we have to give a drug called as levodopa. L-dopa, because it crosses blood-brain barrier, and there in the brain it gets converted to dopamine, and then it will show its effects. Okay, so these are the other than Parkinsonism, we have other disorders like Wilson's disease, which is all actually excessive copper deposition in the basal ganglia area will lead to Wilson's disease. Okay, copper excess. Chorea is like dancing type of movements what person develops. Okay, in case of like basal ganglial disorders, there may be athetosis, that is rhythmic and twisting type of movements. Choreoathetosis is like together dancing type of movements along with rhythmic and twisting movements. Chorea is always dance, but a dancing type of movements person may develop. Okay, then hemibalismus, that is actually movements, violent, involuntary, abnormal movements of one side of the body, mostly arm. Okay, so that is kernicterus, damage of basal ganglia may cause jaundice. Okay, that is kernicterus. So this is actually caused due to the deposition of bilirubin and biliverdin pigments. We have also studied this in biochemistry, kernicterus. Okay, beta. So all these are connections, functions, and only Parkinsonism is asked, but we have discussed almost all disorders. Okay, then what do you know about adrenoglucocorticoids? Do you remember what is stretch reflex? Here comes stretch reflex. It has come for 5 marks question with a stretch reflex. So in case of stretch reflex, again, this is also a sensory type of pathway, same like what we have just studied for pain pathway. But here we are finding the receptors are actually starting in the skeletal muscle. We have specialized receptors inside the skeletal muscles, which are called as muscle spindle. This muscle spindle is actually important because it helps in the perception of the position of muscle, proprioception. Okay, so in case of this, you will see the proprioceptors, that is the muscle spindle, is carrying information via sensory nerve. Okay, through the via dorsal root of ganglion, you can see it is again entering into the posterior horn. It is something like reflex arc. Directly, you are finding there is a synapse between the sensory neuron and motor neuron. The motor nerve is coming via the same spinal nerve. Okay, then this motor nerve is innervating this skeletal muscle. Suppose if there is any foreign object or something, the skeletal muscle will contract and it will protect itself. Okay, something like that is what is called as stretch reflex. Okay, so this is stretch reflex, which is asked for you. It is asked now for 5 marks. You can elaborate by just drawing this muscle spindle, which is nothing but it's a type of receptor which is found in the skeletal muscle for the purpose of proprioception. Okay, so the muscle spindle is situated deep inside the skeletal muscle. Okay, so it has, like, suppose if you see the structure, it has in the middle you have non-contractile portion, towards the terminal parts we have contractile portion. This is outer side is completely skeletal muscle. See, here you are finding red in color, whatever are shown are afferent nerves, and blue in color are nothing but efferent nerves. That means this muscle spindle is innervated by both type of nerves, afferent and efferent. Okay, beta? That is. Okay. Glucocorticoids. Anybody remembers the functions of glucocorticoids? What is accommodation reflex? We have 3 questions here. Accommodation reflex, olfactory pathway, impedance matching. 3 questions have come from special senses. Optic pathway, beta, vision pathway, visual pathway, can anybody tell me? See, these are the two, our eyeballs. Okay, so eyeball, it has 2 eye fields in fact. Towards the nose, this side is the nasal eye field, and towards the lateral side we have temporal eye field. Okay, then you will see this is the optic nerve, which is having half of the fibers are nasal fibers and the other half of the fibers are temporal fibers. Okay, the nasal fibers, one side it is shown in red color, the other side it is shown in blue color. Similarly, temporal also. Only the nasal fibers will cross over to form optic chiasma. That means temporal fibers are traveling in the same. That means right side temporal fibers will go into the right optic tract. Left temporal fibers will go into the left optic tract. Whereas nasal fiber of right side will come to left side. Nasal fibers of left side will come to right side. So that is the formation of optic tract. After the formation of optic tract, you will see they will be relaying in lateral geniculate body. Okay, from there you will see these are all optic radiations. Finally, the vision is going into visual area number 17, 18 and 19. Okay, now let us see what is accommodation reflex. This one bit. Now once you have understood the pathway, see here, suppose if the vision has to go, it is passing through eye, then optic nerve, from here optic chiasma, then optic tract. This is all visual pathway. Lateral geniculate body, optic radiation and visual cortex. Area number 17. Accommodation reflex in the sense, suppose you are looking at the far object, your eyeball is adjusting. Similarly, suddenly you started looking into your book, again your eyeball is adjusting. So that type of accommodation of our eyeball to far vision and also near vision is nothing but accommodation reflex. Now, how is it possible now from the fibers which have are there in the visual area number 17. These nerve fibers are sending information to area number 8. That means this is the frontal lobe, frontal eye field, area number 8. The fibers are moving from occipital lobe to frontal lobe. Okay. Now the fibers from the frontal eye field, they are passing into this brain stem. I hope you remember Edinger-Westphal nucleus for oculomotor nerve. From here, the fibers are going to ciliary ganglion. Via short ciliary nerves, they are innervating the ciliary muscles which we see in the like iris. You remember we have an opening in the center of iris, that is pupil. Pupillary constriction will be there, pupillary dilatation will be there. Constriction, when you are looking at the bright light, there will be pupillary constriction. Whenever you are looking at dim light, there will be pupillary dilatation. Okay, this is all to accommodate the amount of light which enters the retina. Now, these are the nerves which are like responsible for all these movements. Suppose like short ciliary nerves, they are contracting the ciliary muscle, contraction of constrictor pupillae, constriction of pupil. So this is actually increasing the anterior curvature of lens. The other way around now, from the frontal eye field, again through this somatic motor nucleus of oculomotor nerve, you are finding the fibers are going to medial rectus muscle. Isn't it? Extraocular muscle. This is one of the extraocular muscle. So it causes contraction of medial rectus, which brings about convergence of eyeball. So this is all movements of eyeball which are under the control of oculomotor nerve, which is finally connected with visual pathway only. So this reflex is accommodation reflex. Okay. So after accommodation reflex, olfactory pathway, impedance matching. What is impedance matching? From ear he gave one question, from eye he gave one question, and impedance matching is here only. Stapedius, impedance matching. Okay, I will first help you with this diagram, then we can go with definition. Anyhow, it's a 2 marks question only. Impedance matching in the sense, see, the ear is collecting the sound waves, that is pinna. From here, the sound waves are passing through external acoustic meatus and hitting the tympanic membrane. When you see the surface area of the pinna, it is quite big, but the place where all sound waves are converging, that is tympanic membrane, is quite small. So that means from the large area, if the sound waves are converging and hitting a small area, then obviously the power will be more, and that energy will be carried to hit the 3 ear ossicles, malleus, incus and stapes, one by one. So that matching is actually called as impedance matching. Okay, so that picture won't be there, but you can see the definition. It should be here only. Yes, but impedance matching. Process by which tympanic membrane and auditory ossicles convert the sound energy into mechanical vibration in cochlear fluid with minimum loss of energy when matching the impedance offered by fluid. Okay, so impedance means obstruction or opposition to the passage of sound waves. When sound wave reach inner ear, that is the perilymph in cochlea, it offers some resistance. Okay, but the fluid resists the transmission of sound waves due to its own inertia. But tympanic membrane and auditory ossicles effectively reduce the sound impedance because the force with which it moves, it effectively vibrates the perilymph present inside the cochlea. That's what is impedance matching. Okay, beta, it's only 2 marks, 3 marks question. Combination in olfactory pathway. What is olfactory pathway, beta? It's a very small pathway. From where does it start? Yeah, this is olfactory. Oh, this is taste. Olfactory, where does it start? Cribriform plate of ethmoid bone, the nasal mucosa. The nasal mucosa has olfactory neurons, isn't it? These are all supporting cells. Okay, this is mucous membrane within which you will have specialized neurons, olfactory receptors. In between, these are all supporting cells Information is going from these neurons, it is entering into the olfactory bulb. It has to pass through this cribriform plate of ethmoid bone. In the anterior cranial fossa, we have the olfactory bulb, if you remember. So this is the pathway of smell, olfactory pathway. Very small pathway, that's how it is asked only in 2 marks. Okay, see. Axons of bipolar olfactory receptors pierce the cribriform plate of ethmoid bone and reach the olfactory bulb. Okay, in the olfactory bulb, you have specialized cells called as mitral cells. Okay, so this area which is big round in color is olfactory glomerulus. So olfactory receptors, they form synapse with the mitral cell, and this synapse is taking place in this area which is called as olfactory glomerulus. And all the neurons which are starting as mitral cells, they collectively form olfactory tract. Okay, so this is what is written here. So finally, the information is going to olfactory cortex. Where do we see olfactory cortex? It's as a part of limbic system. That means deep in the diencephalon, deeper part of the cerebrum. Okay. So if you want to be more specific, that includes anterior olfactory nucleus, prepiriform cortex, olfactory tubercle, and amygdala. Okay. That is. Then we have to go to 3 more chapters, that is endocrine system and hormones. 2 we have finished, CNS and special senses. Let us go to reproductive and endocrine system. Whichever comes first, we will go with those. Hormones we got. Yes, better. PTH also one question is asked. What are the functions of parathyroid hormone, beta? It helps in increasing of blood calcium levels, isn't it? Functions of PTH is asked for 5 marks. Parathyroid hormone. Yes, these are the functions. Yes. Actions, functions is same thing. So parathyroid hormone, it is bringing about increasing in, it maintains the blood calcium levels. Always 9 to 11 milligrams per deciliter. So how does it do? It will work on bones, kidney and GIT. On bones, it causes bone resorption. Resorption in the sense it dissolves the bones. Then on kidney, it helps in the reabsorption of calcium from renal tubules. It also helps in the reabsorption of calcium from the gastrointestinal tract. Okay, that has been elaborated here. So this is actually vitamin D. Like in the skin, we have 7-dehydroxy cholecalciferol. So in the presence of sunlight, it is converted to cholecalciferol 25 hydroxy. Then in the kidneys, it is converted to 125 dihydroxy cholecalciferol, which is active form of vitamin D, which helps in the reabsorption of calcium from the GIT and also from kidney. Okay, that is all vitamin D only. So those are the functions better. So that has been elaborated. I think link may go. I will resend the link and we will discuss remaining questions.